that life will have pain and suffering. That's a guarantee. The choice comes in whether you accept it or not. So leaning into those hard has been, it's one of the most difficult things I think that human beings have to do in their life, because everything in you wants to avoid pain, wants to avoid suffering. You just want to be happy. Yeah. If we don't lean into the hard, we don't get to the place where we can fill up.
Greetings, everyone, and welcome to When the Moment Chooses You. I am your host, Coach Charlene, and I am so excited today to have Josephine with me on the show. So, Josephine, welcome to the show.
Well, thank you. I'm so happy to be here. The moment chose me to be here, actually, with you. Quite literally.
It really did. And quite honestly, what I really love about, when I did this podcast, I had no idea that I could even get people to come on the show. You know, those self-limiting beliefs that you have. I'm like, who wants to listen to a podcast? But honestly, if there's a dream in your heart, I know there's somebody that's attached to the dream. So when I was scanning, I think LinkedIn, maybe, I can't quite remember now because it's been a while, but I saw the word Positivity Center. And so that's when I start kind of looking at Josephine's information, because I always want to invite people that can kind of inspire us to be better people and better human beings. So Josephine, tell us a little bit about yourself first.
For sure. So I live in Calgary, Alberta. I am a mom with 2 teenage boys. I've been married for, oh my gosh, I think we're coming on 18 years. So
congratulations.
Love grows better with time, just like a fine
Absolutely.
wine. So just to encourage people in that department. And then for business, I am the founder of Positivity Center, which is my consultancy firm. And we basically exist to enhance the well-being of organizations. And we do that really by focusing in on the well-being of their people. And everything we do is not my opinion. It's grounded in some science with positive psychology, emotional intelligence. And I also come to the playing field with a certificate in strengths profile. So that is something I've relied on over many, many years to help build teams, create leaders. Well, not create leaders, but really, feed into leaders, right? Because I think there's always something within all of us, right? It's just a matter of it being fed. So, yeah.
Absolutely. No, I think that's pretty awesome. So the reason why I started this show really was because I do believe that there's some moments that choose us to either speak up, to disrupt, to inspire, to change, to transform, or whatever that moment is for you. And so in 2020 is when I had my moment. Now, I had already been doing things that I felt that were, feeding my soul. But then I had this stirring in my soul. And I actually went into prayer because of the incident with George Floyd, with that murder. And I kind of went into prayer, and then I heard these words that what I do in this moment will determine my destiny and dictate my future. And so that moved me from that anguish that I was feeling to action. And I just I began to share my story. And it just went like a whirlwind when I stepped into that moment. And so I wanted to know from you, Josephine, has there been any moments for you that called you into them?
Yeah. Well, I think so. There's been so many moments. But I would say, when I think about the who I am and the what I do right now, I can still look back to the moment, if you will, that called me to this direction and to this path. And actually, it was losing my job. So, in 2013, it was 2013, lost my job, and in the end of the year. And I was doing direct sales, and I was killing it. Our team was doing so awesome. And we were actually I was going to actually be speaking at our leadership conference. And so I was so excited. When you finally get to this place where you're like, I'm kind of arriving.
Yes.
And somebody told me about that arrival syndrome thing. And I'm like, oh, gee. But so then when the company closed, so did my business. And then I just felt like there was it's just like I could only see what was illuminated as the next step before me. And at that time it was where everything else seemed so dark. The only place that had this bit of light was go do this other company. So I got involved in this other company so I could continue, working with women and helping women feel beautiful from the inside out. We did that with jewelry. So I continued with jewelry. And it was actually at a show that I met somebody. And I would say that for me, most often it's a person. Like I feel like God sends a person into my life. And then that person is part of that moment that is choosing me, if you will. So I met this person, and she's still a friend now, but she became a coach when I first met her. And she's a wonderful coach. Her name is Carmen Parody. And it was actually working with her that I realized what it was that I wanted to do, found the course in which I wanted to take to do what I wanted to do. And that was when I began like my journey with my diploma of positive psychology and well-being. And it was like when I in the journey of, and then when I graduated, there was like kind of, when there's that moment where you're like, that was before, and then there's a distinct after. So the moment was longer than, say a moment, but there were moments that culminated to be for me there was a Josephine pre-positive psychology, and then there was a Josephine post-positive psychology, and everything about me shifted, like who I was as a mother, how I was a friend, my self-awareness for my own emotions, what I wanted to contribute to the world. And that was when I wouldn't say I heard a voice. I don't get audible voices, but I just remember reading the Bible, and there was these words that kept being highlighted for me. It was build a new Jerusalem. Build a new Jerusalem. So it's been kind of my mission to my new Jerusalem I felt like it's been in the senior health space and in healthcare. And I mean, I don't come to it with a healthcare background at all. So it is a massive undertaking. And I've been watching The Chosen too, and I see like parallels between what Jesus was doing and how he was building the team, like the disciples, right? And what his mission was and how he was going to fulfill his mission. And it was hard. And if you think about the kind of love that he was trying to help people see and understand, that's how I feel sometimes. So this moment has chosen me, but man, I'm telling you, it's hard. It is really hard, because there are times where I'm like, is anyone going to get on board here? This love thing, this new care system, it could be really awesome, So moments, I guess.
I know. And absolutely, because the moment that chose me took 2 years to manifest.
See, there you go.
I totally understand what you're talking about. I think you said something that made me think about how difficult it is. To really, really step into those things that your heart is telling you to do. And it actually reminds me, I love how you said the Josephine that was before and then after. And I think about this, it's a quote by Paul Pueblo, I think his name is, but he said, maybe the journey isn't so much as becoming, but it's about unbecoming everything that's not like you, so that you could become who you were really destined to be. And so when you said that, that was extremely powerful, because I think a lot of people are trying to get to that dream or that thing that they want to do, but they want to stay the same person. And you really can't stay the same person if you're going to launch into what's really in your heart to do. So tell me about some of the barriers that you had to face to break through to become that new version of Josephine.
Well, in the beginning, it seemed really easy, actually, because it was me studying, reading research, and then applying research to my own life. And then through the courses I was taking, I would have to do other activities to then implement the research into somebody else's life. So when I was in my small circle, it was very fluid. I was in flow. It was very powerful. I saw people's personal lives change and their relationships improve, like where people thought there was irrepair and it was so broken, like it wasn't. People just were able to be. And this was mostly in the beginning, I was actually working with seniors who were living in long-term care. And I'm not sure if you have anyone of your loved ones in care or have friends who have loved ones in care, but there can be real big rifts between, mom or dad and children. And so in the beginning, it was very fluid, and I got to see a lot of relationships restored, and people kind of have a renewed spirit and a renewed sense of, accomplishment of what they wanted to achieve. And I really helped them do that by looking at that, the pre and post, like the leaving of the old you and the accepting of the new you. Because of course, if you're in care, you've probably got some physical or cognitive, complication that is preventing you from doing what the old you would have done. I would say my biggest challenges are now, right? Because especially wanting to make such a splash and a pivot in healthcare and not having a healthcare background, that has been something that has stopped me many times. And I would say my journey is like go, and then I encounter blocks, and then I sometimes almost want to quit,
Yeah.
And I do. And then there's a time where I just get quiet, don't do much. And then somebody comes along. It's always a person for me. It's like God just keeps sending angels my way. And yes. Somebody has a little bit of belief in myself that I don't have. And then I also have to realize that, what you said about there's a you that has to change in order for you to keep moving forward. So I'm very aware of that. And sometimes we're very conditioned, and I've caught myself very many times. That would be a big challenge, is the conditioning that I am, who I think I am, but I'm not to be that person now or in the future, right? Like I remember last year before I started the show that I do, I was just like, well, I'm not a very consistent person. And I was like, why would I have that belief about myself? Like I got to change that belief. I can, show up to be who I say I want to be and need to be for myself and others. So there's always that constant changing, but it is a barrier because we get so conditioned, and it's sometimes difficult to see inside what's happening in your own heart, right?
Yes.
It's so easy to see it in somebody else's life.
Yep.
It's so much harder to see it in your own. And so,
absolutely.
So I'm so thankful for the people that have just come about. It's just those beautiful moments that have helped me move forward. Yeah.
Yeah. I so agree with you about people coming into your life, to really give you that, because I was the same way, Josephine. I was like extremely shy. Like you would not tell me that I would be doing what I'm doing now and speaking to hundreds and thousands of people. You would not have told me that, because when I did my speech class, when I graduated, I started my, at City College, and I had to do a 5-minute speech, Josephine. I think I melted my sweat. My whole outfit was wet. And it was 5 minutes, and I was clinging onto the podium for dear life. I was like, this has to be the most horrible speech in the world. And they said that I did okay. But for me, I had such a fear. And I got delivered so profoundly that now I can't shut up.
That's awesome.
But it was a barrier. It was allowing my voice to stay minimized.
Yeah.
And so I know when you find your voice, that's when you can amplify it. And then your voice print resounds in the earth realm, which is amazing. And so as we're in Women's History Month. And so I'm so glad I'm interviewing you during this month in particular, because you're really doing some awesome things. But I'm wondering if you can tell us a little bit more about your Positivity Center or your business.
Well, in what regard? Like the people we help or the things we've done?
Yeah. What's the vision of your
Well, Positivity Center itself will continue to provide well-being education, support, tools, resources for people who want to prioritize their well-being. It's one thing to say you want to, and it's another thing to actually do it, right? And I've always said that positive psychology is something that's meant to be lived. It's an experience that you experience. Knowledge is just not enough in this case, right? So, when I was talking to you about my journey, it was like I read the research. I didn't just read the research and write a paper about it, right? I applied it to my life. I applied it to somebody else's life, applied it to many communities. And so that's just been, all our efforts at Positivity Center have been doing that, really applying the science to see the impact that it makes. One of the areas that I've been able to apply the science has been with caregivers, actually. And we worked with so TELUS Fund they have a connection with this caregiver. It's called Stories for Caregivers. And it's like a platform that offers, inspiration and some resources and stories for caregivers, right? To help them through what can be a rather difficult journey. And that was really a lot of fun, because we kind of got to do our own mini science experiment, really. We did a mini documentary, and we had 2 caregivers and the people that they were partnering with to provide care. And they did a savoring tool. And so I coached them to kind of like help them figure out a way that they could apply savoring that made sense to them, that didn't take extra time, because that's probably the number one challenge is people don't have time, and it was meaningful for them. And so then we created the tool and we took them through this 2-week journey. We did like pre-interviews and post-interviews, and we did a life satisfaction survey pre and post the 2 weeks. And their life satisfaction did improve numerically. So we got the quantitative data for that.
Awesome.
But the thing that I love seeing the most was the qualitative data. You know, just the awareness, the depth of what they were doing and who they were with, what that could actually mean and how it could improve their days. You know, like some people ask me, like, how do you have a better day when it's, you know, feeding somebody and changing tubes and showering? And well, it really all depends on and what your perspective, the lens, the glasses you put on to view those acts, to view that person, to view its meaning. It's whatever meaning you create out of it. So that was probably some of my most favorite work was doing that through a grant fund. And we had applied as a pilot for a series. We wanted to do like 9 episodes, all using a different tool for caregivers. And we never got the grant to do the full series. But I still think, that was right at COVID. So that was 2020. And I still think like there's a possibility that, you know, we can keep putting this out there in the world to show people, you know, because now we're post-COVID and there are many communities that are looking at how do we really implement well-being? What can that really look like for aging adults? What can that look like for caregivers? So it still seems to be this like niche that calls me, although I'm trying to get into different, you know, organizational niches, but it just seems to be that this caregiving and older aging healthcare sector just calls me, because it just is where I make the biggest difference. And it's also been confirmed by other people, because I know that I used to teach at continuing education at the university, and I used to guide people through this meaning-making activity. And then I also guided them through Paul Wong's meaning theory. And at the end of his meaning theory, is like, you have to evaluate how you feel. And I could evaluate it for myself, but other people around me were also confirming that for me. So that was really interesting for me, because I remember the first time I ever volunteered in a long-term care center, and we were doing this adapted bowling activity, and people were coming up to me who were caregivers, you know, with residents at the community. And they're like, do you do this for a living? And I'm like, in my very first, you know, volunteer session. And they're like, your eyes are just so lit up, and like people are connecting with you, and you're so good at connecting with them. And so that was for me confirmation that this was who I was meant to be working with. Right. So that's another really cool thing, to be looking for confirmation. So yes, we do work with organizations, but it seems to be that the organizations we work most with are the older aging, you know, communities and extended communities. Yeah.
Well, that's wonderful. I think that's great. And I think that's a huge need. And just for you to have such passion for it, that's amazing. You know, Josephine, I like to ask my guests, like, for their top 3 little wisdom gems that they would like to provide for their audience to inspire them.
Yeah. Well, I would say first things first, and this is part of my framework that we're developing, because as we move forward, there's going to be a framework and there's going to be a community. So it's called the heart-based approach. And that'll be, you know, that's us creating, birthing a different form of what care can look and feel like for people. So one of the things that I've had to learn to do and still struggle with from time to time is to really lean into the messy, the hard, the difficult emotions that come with just experiencing life. And one of my rules that I wrote down as I was writing the syllabus and the learner workbook for the course was that life will have pain and suffering. That's a guarantee. Right. The choice comes in whether you accept it or not. So leaning into those hard has been, it's one of the most difficult things I think that human beings have to do in their life, because everything in you wants to avoid pain, wants to avoid suffering. We just want to be happy. Yeah. If we don't lean into the hard, we don't get to the place where we can fill up. And, you know, there's fear around leaning into hard, because people feel like, I don't have time to go there. I'm going to get stuck in sadness or anger or grief or despair. But the whole thing is not to get stuck there. It's to move through it, right? But you don't move through it unless you lean into it. And so that's my first thing. That would be my top one, is like, just learn to lean into the hard. You know, all emotions have value, not just call it the good ones, right?
Yes.
And so you need tools to do both. You need tools to lean in, you need tools to fill up. And then I think for me, it's been connecting with people. I find that in those moments where I want to give up, it's allowing somebody to, you know, conversation, recording a show together. Like, people are coming into your life and they want to help, or they want to inspire, or they see inspiration in you, but you have to say yes. Like, you can't just say no to people who want to offer you, you know, companionship or support, or, you know, partnership of some kind. So saying yes is really important. Even if saying yes, like I've said yes to things that have crumbled, and that's okay too. But you just never know until you take that yes to that relationship or to that person, and support they can offer you. And you should do it for others too. And then the other thing I'd say is learn. Like, I think it's so important to learn in whatever mode you like to learn in, whether it's experience or conversation or books or podcasts, you know, however you love to learn, just learn. Because I think it's huge for, you know, what we've kind of talked about. A theme that's come up with our conversation is, you know, kind of leaving the old you that used to be to create a new you that helps you become into, you know, who you are to become, to do what it is that you're going to do. And those are going to require different skills and strengths and whatnot. So learning is really important, because it also helps the brain to continue to create new synapses and connections. And if you don't do that, then it's like, how will you let go? So I think learning is a key component to moving forward. Yeah.
Wow. Those are powerful. Those are absolutely powerful. You know, as I was listening to you talk, and, you know, I don't know why, but I just absolutely love quotes, and they stick with me for a long time. But one of the things when you were talking, what the essence of what I heard in it is, the journey to obedience is terrifying, but you have to go anyway. And so you are a true champion. And I love that you were able to articulate that so well. So can people get in touch with you?
Oh, for sure. Yeah, I can. Positivitycenter.com is a great place to start. Heartbasedapproach.com is our sister website that outlines a little bit about, call it the proactive mental health tool, and the care community that we are building. And then I'm on LinkedIn, and you can reach me at hello@positivitycenter.com. So
that is awesome. Well, it has truly been an honor to have you on the show. I'm just going to say this was our first session, because we're going to record another one. I really enjoy.
Part B is coming.
Part B is coming, like, really soon, because I want to kind of unpack a little bit about women's history and, you know, just being a woman and going through the journey. So you'll be hearing from her again this month in particular. I hope.
I'd be game. It's all good.
Okay,
I'm going to say yes.
Okay, so you just confirmed, and now she just proved a powerful point when someone asks, say yes. No, thank you so much, Josephine. It was such a delight to talk to you. I feel so inspired. So thank you, and I look forward to seeing you on our next segment.
Sounds awesome. We'll see you then.
Okay.